Is Jordan Binnington actually linked to the Edmonton Oilers?
Hey, this is Brain Chen. Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here in the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about the fact that there are rumors out right now that Jordan Binnington is linked to Edmonton. There's also rumors surrounding Brayden Schenn that have come to light. And the Blues take on those New Jersey Devils. It is the final game of the road trip. So we do have a lot to talk about today on Thanksgiving Eve. If you're in the States, if you're my friends watching from Canada, hello, hope you're doing well. There is a lot to unpack on today's episode. And today's episode is brought to you by my friends at FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I hope everybody is having a happy Wednesday, November 26th. I'm not in my usual spot. I'm at my parents' house, so that is where I am filming. I don't believe in the pre-recorded episodes, especially now when there's so many rumors and speculations going on. I wanted to film in the moment, so again, I do apologize for the not usual setup that I have. Very pink, I know. If you're listening, then just disregard what I said. But there's been some rumors about Jordan Binnington. And for me, I was a little bit confused about what was going on. The Oilers, they haven't been so great this season. They lost most recently 8-3 to the Dallas Stars, and with an overall record of 10-10-5. Placing them third from the bottom in the Pacific. I want to remind you that the Pacific right now is being absolutely dominated by those Anaheim Ducks. But right now, goaltending seems to be the big issue for Edmonton. So the Oilers did pull Stuart Skinner after he gave up 4 goals and just 8 shots in the first period. And then Calvin Pickard replaced him. But then he struggled, obviously. So again, both goalies really ended up struggling in that contest. Now, again, there's been some buzz, right, that there is a potential interest that Edmonton has when it comes to Jordan Binnington. And this isn't the first time, by the way, that Binnington has been linked to the Oilers. There was times during the offseason where it's happened, but nothing came from it, obviously. I guess, the big news between the Blues and the Oilers was the offer sheets. And I would say that it worked out pretty well for the Blues. But there has been some insiders, right, that have been kind of talking about the rumors. And again, this has been on TSN. This has been all over media, right? That there is a history of interest between the Oilers and Jordan Binnington. And it just kind of went on to say that Stan Bowman wants to maybe revisit that, and that the problem that the insiders are hearing is about an annual basis, almost around the quarter mark every year, and there's interest, but you have somebody to deal with. And I think that it's actually very interesting, first off, that we know that there is interest between Binnington and the Oilers, right? And Edmonton, obviously, not having a good start to this season. Neither are the Blues, but I think this is what makes Jordan Binnington even more so of an asset now. It is because the team that he is currently playing on probably isn't going to make it to the playoffs. They're going to probably want to kind of reevaluate their roster as a whole. And Binnington has a lot of value. And what I mean by value, it's plain and simple. You could get picks from Binnington. You could get NHL-ready players from Binnington. You could get a whole bundle of things that you might need for the organization that is more valuable than a player that's on the 4th line or 3rd line, right? So Binnington still has value. He is still projected to be the starting goalie for Team Canada for the Olympics. So again, I don't think Jordan Binnington by any means is a bad goalie. I think the team as a whole has been bad. Now with Edmonton, it's interesting because that's a team where you have a lot of talent up front and they have not been able to get the job done. So in the evaluation of the Oilers themselves, you have to kind of question, okay, well, is this an Edmonton issue or is this a goaltending issue? And I believe that they were just kind of dealing with some rough stretches between their two goalies. I mean, Stuart Skinner is usually a guy that you can count on, and he just hasn't been playing like himself. Now, again, I know it's still relatively early in the season, almost approaching that quarter mark, but you have to kind of question what exactly is going on. And would Jordan Binnington be able to help the Edmonton Oilers? And I believe that he would. Do I want this to happen? Absolutely not. Coming from a Blues perspective, I don't. I don't want to see Jordan Binnington leave, but I can understand the value that Jordan Binnington could bring to a team like Edmonton. And with a team like Edmonton, right, who have made multiple Stanley Cup Finals appearances and haven't been able to get the job done, they are still, in my opinion, a team that you cannot count out despite their rocky 10-10-5 start to the season. With a player like Binnington, we all know that he thrives on adversity, right? He thrives on that kind of underdog mentality, whether he admits it or not. Again, you think about how the Blues won the Cup and the position that he had to take in that. So I could see this working out in a sense of a trade, but I do find it very interesting that all of a sudden this is brought to light that Edmonton has always had interest in Jordan Binnington. And again, I just want to remind you too that a lot of insiders have kind of stated about, how maybe last year's big offer sheet had nothing to do with any of this. And this has just been something that has been known. But again, it is so interesting to me that I don't know, that this is something where it could be a potential swap even of goalies. And would you, as a Blues fan, and I'm asking you this because I'm curious, would you want Stuart Skinner? Would that be a goalie that you would be okay with having? Is Stuart Skinner and then a Joel Hofer backing him up? That to me, again, it's no disrespect to Stuart Skinner by any means. I know that he hasn't been having a good season. But I am such a ride or die with Jordan Binnington that the idea of not having Binnington in net, wearing the blue note, just seems very foreign to me. It seems odd. It just seems uncomfortable. And I'm not a fan of it, okay? But if that's all you're doing is just swapping the goalies, I don't feel like that's enough. And I'm not, again, trying to be disrespectful by any means to Stuart Skinner, but for me, it just does not feel like that is a big enough return for getting a guy like Jordan Binnington. And I also want to point out too, because there's a lot of names, and this is all of TSN people, but a quote from TSN, if a deal comes up that allows Stan Bowman to make a trade tomorrow, that he knows in his guts it's going to be an upgrade in net, and it involves moving from Stuart Skinner, it's done, no question. So it seems to me like Stan himself has maybe talked to some people and said, hey, listen, if I have to move on from Stuart Skinner, I'll be okay with that as long as that's an upgrade. Well, you have to look at the goalies around you. Well, who's an upgrade? Jordan Binnington. So I feel like this could happen. And if it does happen, what I will say is this. I'm glad I did an episode on it because I was reading and I was, and I saw this and I'm like, oh, I have to talk about it. So there is truth behind it because that's all TSN talked about over the last little bit of time. But it's going to hurt. It's going to be like one of those trades where it really hurts. And I think that's all there is to it. I mean, I think the amount of respect and love that we have for Binnington is unmatched. And he is the reason why we did win that cup. So I don't want to see Binner go by any means, but there does seem to be some truth behind all of these quote unquote rumors that are being brought to life now. So I could see this happening. If I were to give you a percentage, I would say about a 70% chance I could see this happening. But again, that's today with a lot of, new information coming to light. Again, we need to let it breathe and see if it's still this heavy. But right now, I'm just seeing so much about it that it's kind of leading me to believe that it might. But again, at the end of the day, Doug Armstrong could be like, nope, not doing this. So I guess we will see. Well, my friends, there are trade rumors like nonstop when it comes to the Blues. And there's another player that kind of has had their name out there. So I want to talk to you about that. But before I do so, I want to talk to you about my friends over at Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. I like using Monarch because it's helped me organize my accounts, track my spending, and get a better handle on my investments without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks and use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. In other news, there has been some more rumors surrounding Captain Braden Shen. We all know how I feel about Braden Shen. I love Shenner. He is one of my favorites. And seeing him last week and being able to catch up with him and having a conversation about, the season, I feel for him because at the end of the day, it's not an ideal situation for any team to be in the position that the Blues are in. But again, Braden Shen is still valuable, right? He's in his 6th year out of his 8th in his $52 million contract. And while this maybe isn't his best season, he has been playing actually kind of well in this road trip, actually, so I'll give him that. The captain himself has his name kind of out there again when it comes to different rumors that entail a trade, right? And I feel like Shen could be somebody that another team might look at and they might say, you know what, he could help us so much on our 3rd or 4th line. Now, do I think that Braden Shen is a 4th liner? No, I do not. I still think that he is a 3rd or 2nd liner, depending on the team. But I'm sure that if it's to a contending team, he would be okay being on that 4th line, right? Now, Braden does have a 15-team no trade list. What does that mean? There's 15 teams that Braden Shen is not going to. Do we know what those teams are? No, we do not. And while there's other players on the Blues, like a Jordan Kyrou and a Bushi, who were kind of on the trade block last season, they both have full no trade clauses. So any possibility of a move that, takes over, you have to keep in mind that this is not going to impact those that do have those full no trade clauses. I know that I see people always kind of tweeting things like, trade Bushi, trade Kyrou, but when you have a full no trade clause, it's not that simple. And I don't think any of those guys would waive it. Now with Braden, it's interesting because essentially half the teams in the NHL, not that he's wanting to be traded, but he obviously doesn't have them on a list. And you can kind of take this as it is, as I kind of did some brainstorming. I'm like, okay, well, what teams would Braden not want to go to? Probably not Philadelphia. He was already once there and they left on bad terms. Not Braden's fault, their fault. LA, I mean, he was drafted there, but I'm like, does he really want to go back to the Kings? Probably not. I would say he wants to go somewhere on the East. You might be wondering why the East, because would you really want to be playing in the West? I don't know. Again, there's give and takes. I know I said before the Winnipeg Jets. I could see that being a team, but I was thinking more towards the Atlantic Division is where I could see Brayden Schenn going. Well, it's interesting, right? Because while I think for Brayden, I think that there is sort of kind of that interest when it still comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think that they were somebody that was looking at Brayden. They're a bit of an older team. I know some people have said the Canadiens. But I do feel like, and again, this is something that was said on TSN about about the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're an older team, but their veterans would fit in well with a Maple Leaf team that looks out of sorts. A few names that stand out are Brayden Schenn, who is an absolute battler and could help solidify things down the middle for the group. I think that is a very interesting tidbit. And I think for Brayden Schenn, he has so much potential, right? And not potential as in growth as a player, but potential to help the younger players. And there is another team that I found interesting that came up today. Again, there's so many rumors about Brayden Schenn besides the Jordan Binnington rumors, and this is from Daily Faceoff. But it seems like the Blues are in sell mode, is what the insiders are saying, and they're listening to different trade inquiries on just about everyone. And when it comes to the New Jersey Devils, one of the targets is Brayden Schenn. And it appears to be the perfect blue to zone in on. Devils GM, by the way, Tom Fitzgerald, is in the market for a two-way center for his third line, and Brayden Schenn obviously would be compelling to Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. And I think that this is somebody that actually might end up going to New Jersey, which would be crazy. Schenn is not a $6.5 million player anymore. The Blues would almost certainly need to retain salary to facilitate a trade, especially since he had a couple years of his term left. Again, I want to remind you that he is in the 6 out of 8 years of his contract. But Schenn, at a discounted price, could still boost the team's third line and bring veteran leadership. And my colleague, Anthony DeMarco, highlights Schenn as a potential target for a team like the New Jersey Devils. So again, the Devils have about $3.6 million in cap space to work with at the moment. And they have all three of their picks for the first 3 rounds of the 2026 NHL draft, plus 2 fourth-rounders. They also have goaltending prospect, Nico Dahls, who could interest the Blues, especially if they wind up moving on from Jordan Binnington to potentially the Edmonton Oilers. So this is something interesting too, because you have to think about the teams that Brayden wouldn't play for. And I feel like the New Jersey Devils would be a team that he would be willing to play for. I mean, he knows the area. I just spoke to Brayden last week. You know, he's still an Eagles fan. It's close enough. Go Birds. That was just me kind of wanting to throw in the Go Birds onto the show. But it is interesting. And what makes it even more interesting is that they both play each other tonight. And I don't think there's going to be anything too crazy in terms of speculation, but it is a little bit funny for me that they are playing tonight. It's been a roller coaster in the past 24 hours of rumors coming out. I mean, I even saw something about Philip Broberg, and I'm like, wow, like, is Doug Armstrong really just listening to everybody's potential, trade inquiries? And at this point, it's getting leaked to the media, obviously, or to the right people that, relay that information to the public. So there does seem to be some truth behind what's going on. That's why I wanted to make this episode today and not do a pre-recorded episode, because at the end of the day, this is so relevant. And if something does break and something does happen, I want to be able to say, you know what, we talked about it here. We shared our thoughts and opinions, but most importantly, these are not just like sources from Reddit. Like, these are sources that are TSN, Daily Faceoff. Like, these are legit sources that wouldn't be putting this out there if there wasn't any truth behind it. That is why I do think that there is a lot of truth behind what we're hearing. And that if there are some trades that go down, and it pains me because we know how I feel about Brayden Schenn and Jordan Binnington, it might happen. As long as it's not Robert Thomas, I'm fine. And I truly do mean that because I think I would crash out if Robert Thomas got traded. All right, before we talk about tonight's contest, I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So the Blues are in New Jersey tonight for their final game of the road trip. It feels like they've been on the road forever, and that is because they have been on the road forever, as this was a 10-day road trip for the Blues. And I find it really interesting, right? Because the Blues, while on this road trip, had to deal with a bunch of different types of drama, whether it was Textier. I mean, that was a crazy situation. Lucic. I mean, there's been a lot going on, right? So this is a different type of lineup that we're seeing tonight because Coach Montgomery said that he's making, quote, quite a bit of lineup changes for the game against the Devils. So I want to reiterate to you what the lines are for tonight because I found this to be very interesting to say the least. On the first line centering, well, we always know it's going to be this guy, but of course it is Robert Thomas. I think some things in life don't change, and one of them is that Robert Thomas is the 1C. So you have Tomer in the 1C position. To the left, it's Bushi. To the right, it's Jordan Kyrou. On the second line, Dvorsky centering, Dylan Holloway to the left, and Jake Neighbors to the right. Third line, Pius Suter centering, Braden Shen to the left, and Jimmy Snugger to the right. Finally, that fourth line, you have Sonny centering with Mojo to the left and Nathan Walker to the right. Defense, we have Philip Broberg and Colton Parayko, Tyler Tucker, Justin Falk, Cam Fowler, and Logan Mayu, and Binnington gets a start in net. Now, what I will say is this. Mojo comes into the lineup. Turchenko gets replaced by him tonight. I think for the defensive pairs, I know they have remained the same. And what I will say is this. I think Logan Mayu played a great game against the Rangers, right? I think the team as a whole needs to be a little bit more physical, and that's something I don't see enough. I don't see enough hits. I don't see enough physicality. Sometimes this team gets into a pace that is very lackadaisical, and it's slow motion, and it's not fast, intense hockey, which I feel like when this team actually does get into that good groove, they play really well. And I want to give the Blues credit. In the first period against the Philadelphia Flyers last week, I felt as if the hockey that they played in the first frame is how they need to play in every single contest going forward. That, to me, was the pace and momentum that we needed to see. Now, while Justin did score 2 goals and he was only 1 goal shy of a hat trick and the Blues couldn't get the job done, I still feel as if I am wanting to see more from Holloway. And I know that he has it in him. I do. I feel like we've been seeing Braden Shen accelerate more. I feel like we have been seeing, the speediness and the grittiness of Jordan Kyrou. But Robert Thomas is another player, and I know that he is a playmaker, and I am not bashing on Tomer by any means, who I want to see him score more. I want to see him take more advantage of opportunity in front of the net. A team like New Jersey, it's a really interesting team because they're not with Jack Hughes right now. And Jack Hughes is kind of like their all-star player in a sense. While I do know they have other players like a Timo and, Nico, and I get that. At the end of the day, they're centered around Jack Hughes. So without Jack Hughes, this team, and I don't want to say they look deflated because I feel like that's a little bit rude, but it does look like that. And they haven't been playing as well. So for the Blues tonight, and again, I know the Blues are not that great of a hockey team right now, and I'm very well aware of that. But for the Blues tonight, they have an opportunity here to really take advantage of a deflated Devils team. Again, I think for the Devils, they are really good at keeping the puck in the O zone and maintaining that. They're extremely low when it comes to rebounding. Where they struggle, and again, this is from watching a lot of New Jersey hockey because, again, they play a team that I cover in the Metro. They struggle a lot in the defensive zone, in their defensive zone. And the Blues need to take advantage of that. When the Devils retain the puck and they have different chances, odd man rushes, breakaways, you name it, they thrive. But the moment that they have to then draw back, it's where they struggle. So if the Blues just put a lot of offensive pressure on the Devils tonight, I could see a win. But at the same time, saying win in the same sentence as St. Louis isn't really something where I'm comfortably going to put out into the atmosphere. I am trying to be nice. It's not easy when your team isn't winning. All right, we will catch up tomorrow on Thanksgiving, and I'm going to talk to you about what I'm thankful for when it comes to the Blues. And I will try to think of something because that was a topic idea, so I will think of something, hopefully. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow, and like always, let's go Blues.